Hi everyone. In this video, I plan to talk a little bit about part two of the culminating assignment. So you can choose to watch this video ahead of actually starting it, or if you need more clarification, you can come back and watch it again. This is also a research project, and just like part one, its goal is to see what you've learned in the course. So it is not really only about the plants, which I know is what it sounds in the title, but it's also looking that you've understood other things that we've done previously. So things that come from diversity and genetics and evolution and so forth. So keep that in mind as you're doing the project. The goal is not simply just to answer every question, it's to really show what you've understood from the course. So this particular one is due on Friday by 11:59 p.m. That is the absolute deadline. So anything that is not handed in by this time, it will receive a mark of 0. So it's really important that your assignment comes in by this time. Again, the course is actually over on Friday, so you really need to have everything handed in. Otherwise, it won't make it onto your report card, which would be really bad news. So please make sure that you're following this deadline. It's extremely important. So what our goal in this project is, and I've written it out here for you, we really want to learn about a specific plant and what effects it has on society. So you are going to assume that the viewer of your project is a high school educated person at the very least. So you don't want to be using things that are really, really scientific where people wouldn't understand it. You want to explain it in terms that a high school student or someone with a high school education would actually get. So our first kind of part here is to figure out what topic you want. I put sign up for a topic, but it's really just choose your topic. So I've put a whole bunch of different examples in here. This is really just to keep yourself organized. So choosing a topic and then kind of choosing what you're going to create with that topic. So again, just as before, I would recommend if it's not on this list, you might want to just check in with me. Some species of plants will be just easier to do this project with, while others might be a little bit more difficult. So that's just so that you're aware. So again, choosing the topic is like step one. Now, for the step two, I want you to choose something to create. So again, your goal is to share this information with people in the class or in some other kind of context like that. We are not actually going to share it with one another. I'll just reiterate that. You're only sharing it with me. So you're not actually sharing it with people, but you are sharing it theoretically with high school age students. So here I've put together basically a list of some things that you can use to present. I've asked here not to do a slideshow because, as I said, in the disorders project part one, you really were doing a slideshow there for the most part. So I'm going to ask you to use something else. So what I've put here, these are all links. They're going to basically explain in really simple terms like what each of these different things are, as well as some instructions for how to do them. I've put those together, so if you have questions about them, please ask me. But if there's something else that you feel comfortable with doing, like some people like to do a Prezi, for example, or whatever those things are, just let me know. I'm totally fine with something that's outside of these options. I just ask no slideshows, okay? Step three is to start our research, and you're going to see just below there are questions to guide the research. So again, I've mentioned here, we need to use at the very least 3 reputable sources. So 3 is a very small number. Really, you're most likely going to need way more than 3 sources. So that's a very small minimum. Again, we're not using Wikipedia. It's not reliable. So we wouldn't want to do that. What I wanted to point out here is you are also completing for this project 2 CRAP tests. Some of you might have used these before in other courses. I'll show you just an example of one of them here. So in here, there's going to be 2 copies on D2L that you need to complete. What your goal is to use the questions on this sheet to decide if the source is actually reliable, is it current enough to use, is there any biases there which are concerning, and so forth. So I've mentioned here, you're going to answer the questions. If the source is not, if you're not confident that it's a good source, you should not be using it for your project. So part of the evaluation, which I'm going to speak to in a few minutes, is have you actually chosen good sources? So again, if I see Wikipedia there, that's telling me that you haven't actually, thought about the reliability of the source. So these questions I think are fairly straightforward. If you do have questions about it, please let me know. I'm happy to go over it with you. But I'll just mention at the end here, as a conclusion, once you've done all of these questions, you decide, is this actually a good source to use for my research project? If it's not, okay, then that's where I said you really should try a different source. So you're going to fill in 2 of these crop tests. You are being marked on them, so it's really important that they are completed. Going back to our actual topic sheet, I've mentioned here some questions to guide research. So these are some ideas of what to include. You're going to see that they come up again in the rubric section. Some of them may be more applicable than others. So as I said before, you're going to see pop up in here some concepts from evolution, for example, some concepts from diversity from all the different units that we've done. So it's important that you go back and you actually review what did we learn there. Again, this is a cumulative project. It's at the end of the course. It's meant to show what you've learned all throughout. So I'll give you an example of where I can't really answer the question. So let's say, for example, that I chose corn as my plant species. Well, if I look under plant products, okay, I see here's an example question. It says, if your plant produces food, what nutrients does it have? So that does apply to my topic of corn, okay? Then I see if your plant is medicinal, what chemicals does it have that contributes? Well, corn is not really used for that, therefore I don't need to answer that question. So this is what I'm trying to say with being sort of aware of which questions make sense for your plant and which don't really make sense. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're going through these. These are suggested questions, but depending on your topic, they may or may not fit well with your actual topic. Then we have role in society. So how has it been used throughout history? Is it used by Canadians or other cultures today? Are there any laws and regulations with it? So again, if I'm thinking of my corn example, well, there's no law really to do with corn directly, okay? What I'm thinking of more so is like medicinal or things that are used as drugs in any way. Those will have actual laws with it. Now, the regulation side of it, there may be actually something to say about that. So, for example, for corn, maybe it's possible that corn is not allowed to be transported between countries, okay, or whatever the case might be. You need to look into that information. Slightly different from that is now the connection to society. So, in connection, I want to talk about the whole impacts that the plant has had on things like economy, environment, quality of life. Again, these are suggested topics. Are there any issues or challenges with them? You need to think outside of the box, okay? So you're not going to be able to Google, what is the problem with corn, okay? You're not going to find anything with that. You need to make this based on what your research is, okay? Moving on to technology and research. We want to know the current technologies that are going on to actually grow and make this product with this species. And also any negatives, okay? Again, you might have to think out of the box. So my corn example, for example, could take up a lot of water and a lot of resources to make it. That would be considered a negative in cultivating or growing this product. What technologies are being developed to grow this plant? How are genetic technologies, specifically things like gene editing, genetic engineering, and so forth, how are they being used in the plant? Okay. Important here is you need to show you understand those technologies. So it's not just to say, yes, there are GMO corn plants. Okay, you need to actually describe what they are modifying and how their process looks to do that. So that's what I'm looking for there. And then sort of a subtopic to that is that if the plant is not currently being genetically modified, suggest a useful way that it might be in the future. Again, you're not going to be able to Google necessarily, how can I modify corn and find an answer there. You need to think outside of the box a little bit, and you need to think about the things you understand about corn and how it would be improved. Step 4 is a conclusion. So conclusion is essentially you deciding your opinion based on all of this information found. Has this had an overall positive or negative effect on the world? I mentioned right here, attach your conclusion as one or more paragraphs with your project if it does not fit nicely into what you created. So an example of that is I made an infographic, okay? It has lots of diagrams on it and very few words, let's say, for example. Well, I'm not going to add this big paragraph at the end of that infographic, okay? So instead of doing that, I just attach it as a separate doc. Same thing with your MLA sources, right? Again, you just attach them in that same doc, um, put them together in a works cited. So I had mentioned before, I suggested using this add-on. So if you click add-ons, I have it already added, which is EasyBib. You can also press get add-ons from Google Docs and search up EasyBib. It's a really easy, simple way for you to create a bibliography and a works cited, okay? So here is the marking scheme. Again, it relates directly to the questions that we saw above. I mentioned previously, we're doing those CRAP tests, so it's important that you take those seriously and you actually spend some time on them. Here I am actually looking for the visual elements, okay? So have you used scientific language? Have you communicated appropriately? Are there visual elements that actually help with your explanations? Okay, so that should be fit into every different model that you make. And then finally, we have sort of what the application section would be, impacts, benefits and challenges, and your own opinion. Okay, so for a total, that's 38 marks. Again, I mentioned before, I would like all of your files to be submitted through D2L. If you decide to make a website, you can just put the link there with your work cited and so forth. I will be able to open it. So please do post everything to D2L. Do not share them via email or other places because they tend to get lost there. And again, making sure that we have this finished by Friday at 11:59 p.m. So making sure that all of that stuff is submitted before that deadline.